Hi, I'm Steve Rappaport, Knowledge Solutions Director for the Advertising Research Foundation and author of Listen First, Turning Social Media Conversations into Business Advantage. And today I'm having a conversation with Jim Reynolds. Jim is the head of marketing for Alterian. And Jim, welcome, and it's really nice to talk with you.
Totally appreciate having this opportunity to sit with you, Steve.
Yeah.
In my case, I've been with Alterian now a little over 3 years. The majority of my experience has been working with early stage startups. In this case, I had the opportunity to join Alterian via an acquisition of TechRegi, and have enjoyed the evolution of the social media listening and analytics market so far over the last few years.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because you're one of the, there aren't many people who have several years' experience in this space.
Yeah.
So tell us something about the evolution of social media listening. Because it probably started, with some very, very basic mantra, RSS feed reading and things.
Yeah.
So tell us about it.
It's such an amazing market watching this evolution so far. So in the case where we really started to see folks first entering the market was about 2004, 2005. In this case, many of those companies have already been acquired, such as, like in the case of Nielsen, how Nielsen made their step into the market was purchasing BuzzMetrics, or TNS when they purchased Symphony, which was a small startup out of Buffalo, which most folks have no sense or understanding or realization of. But with the evolution, it has been pretty amazing over the last 3 to 4 years of watching the adoption, the trend, and really folks truly starting to embrace the value of social media content. In the case, when we got started back in this operation was back in 2005. Myself, I joined the organization in 2008, and really in the beginning, where most folks utilized and started utilizing social media is in the case of RSS feeds. Of all things, just very simple listening on Google News or Yahoo News to first understand, wait a second, there may be some consumers publicly talking about me and my brand.
Yeah.
At that next level, we saw the emergence of consumer review sites. So one of the bigger ones that most folks utilize at this point now is probably Yahoo Reviews or Amazon Reviews. So in that case, when you're starting to review a product, again, I find myself doing this personally, you're going to look at those product reviews initially. You're going to understand and say, is this product good? Is this product bad? What do other consumers think about this? Which in turn led to future development of technologies like what Alterian offers as it relates to its SM2 product.
Yeah.
As this evolution continued, one of the better emergences that I saw was a company called Ice Rocket. If you're familiar with Ice
Yes.
Rocket, or if not, it is one of Mark Cuban's funded companies where they looked at a competitive tool set of creating a differentiator or a different solution to what Google may offer. In their case, they created the opportunity to listen to message boards, forums, and blogs, and where many organizations initially started to realize the consumers are driving much of this conversation was with Ice Rocket. And then we saw the next tool-based evolution of folks like ourselves. So at that point, you really had BuzzMetrics, Symphony being some of the first tool sets. Ourselves, Radiant 6, really became those first 4 providers in the market saying, wait a second, consumers, you may want to listen to what folks are saying. And initially, it was very similar to clipping services. So with the clipping service type technology, folks were thinking they would just simply have a report which would highlight bullet point, talk, conversation, bullet point, talk, conversation, and basically summarize what's being discussed in the social market. As these tool sets evolved, and again, you get the entrance of the CI individuals, the BI, and again, for anyone in the room who may not be familiar, customer intelligence or business intelligence, individuals in that case who really wanted structured analytics around this content beyond simple tool sets which would just provide volume, conversational structures, start to analyze trends, sentiment analysis, locational triggers, locational audience. And really over the last 2 years, we saw this come from what I like to call in my case a pirate ship-like organization. Someone in the corner of the office all of a sudden setting up a Twitter account or a Facebook account, which in turn evolved to, wait a second, this is extremely valuable business intelligence as we start to look at our effect of conversations as it relates to critical response or sales campaigns.
So you've really outlined the development of the tools market and especially monitoring.
Yeah.
So now that companies have this data available to them, what are some of the use cases that you're seeing companies using this technology for?
Great question. So in the case of the technologies, as it goes on that evolutionary scale, where much of this initially began was brand monitoring and brand listening. Again, it's the nice, easy way to enter into the social media analytics and drivers. So at that point, folks are just wondering, as a qualitative and quantitative analysis, how many conversations are occurring around my brand? What's being discussed? How is it being discussed? And what I like to label with many of my customers is, do your consumers think you suck? Because that's the most simple way to look at social analytics. After we saw that evolution of once folks realized, wait a second, this is really good data in the context of, let's say, unstructured survey data or comment cards or feedback cards, they then wanted to first understand, after that point, of competitive analytics. If my customers don't like me, do my customers like their competitor or do they not like their competitor? Then product analysis of looking at individual lines of business across those individual transactions. At that point, this would allow them to have what we like to deem a social media benchmark of first understanding the value proposition, the business transactions, and really that overall audit of the consumer. At that point, then folks have started to branch off these data sets. One of the more popular ones that we've seen recently in the B2B market space is the availability of social media for product development. Again, one of the best examples that we'll be publicly releasing a study on here shortly is the tablets, of being able to understand, yes, there is a huge amount of fraction within the market of folks looking at tablets. You have the iPod-centric conversation, and you have tons of Android tablets, and then sub-market tablets, and then HP having their strategy, and then to the flip side, Microsoft having their strategy, which we'll initially understand and determine and help brands develop a better product strategy around this. Great, my customer likes how it swipes this way, but they want to be able to shift the landscape.
Right.
Or they wish the button was on the top or bottom, or like what we saw initially with the iPad 2 when that was released, is the ability of adding cameras. If I'm using this simple device, I want to be able to use it for more broader technologies and a broader use case. That's become a very, very strong use component. After that, we've seen the traditional customer service channels. We often find this very effective with our brand and our technology.
Well, tell us about that, because that, for monitoring, that's one of the most popular applications of this technology. So, have you worked with some companies on that? And if you have, tell us a good story about it.
So on the customer service side, we've actually had quite a few interactions on that side, as it really intertwines between the brand listening as well as the active listening and competitive monitoring campaigns, is that we've had an opportunity to work with a major CPG. In the case of that CPG, they are one of the top 3 candy manufacturers in the US. And in that case, with this chocolate manufacturer, they monitor many of their core product lines, which the majority of us have probably seen commercials for. We even may like their chocolate covered coating in many cases. With that brand, one of the funner things that we saw is that there are many brand advocates and brand lovers to that brand who take a personal onus and ownership around those given conversations. As it relates to the fun story, what they were able to identify within the social media data were individual shortfalls and locational areas where their product was not properly stocked or identified. And they found a direct correlation between their social media data, their call center notes, and comment cards. They realized that they had to restack this content, which initially became the red herring identified in the social media data, and in turn they correlated between internal notes to help them realize, wait a second, we need to get more of candy product A in location A, B, C, and D, because the customers are truly driving that response rate.
That's interesting. Also, you raise a really valuable point, which is the need to look at social media data in the context of other information and other data sources. Sometimes people think, oh, well, this will replace that, but no,
never will.
It's not but,
Yep.
it's and.
Exactly.
Right? So the last question, and that is, talk about social media. Companies are interested in social media not only as a communications platform, but also as a marketing platform and a sales platform. In your experience, have you seen companies use it both ways? And if you have, what would be a really good example of a use of that, and maybe some of the issues around it?
Great question, Steve.
Thank you.
So in that case, as we've all seen, and again, reading the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Adweek, this is one of the major drivers of the growth of social media, is the ability to interact in live time and build a communal conversation with your audience. And of course, folks are immediately going to start to listen and see there are marketing opportunities of reaching out to your audience. So in the case of some of those examples that exist out there, one which I will continually highlight is what Dell's done. And again, if folks are not familiar with the Dell story, Dell was actually drug into social media by a critical response issue. In the case back in 2005 through 2007, we all remember the difficulties that Dell experienced around their offshoring and how this became very much a communal driver of folks who were rather pleased with dealing with call center folks that were offshore. So in that case, Dell realized that there was an issue and they started to need to listen to their audience. Once they were able to establish their brand monitoring, their core metrics, their KPIs, they realized the second opportunity that consumers are out there saying, hi folks, I'd like to buy your product. Can you give me some feedback around Dell? Can you give me some feedback around HP's PCs? And it's really been a rather brilliant experience on their side of watching the solution evolve. So in the case of how they've internally managed the solution, what they're initially listening for are folks who are asking buying questions and buying transactions. One of the things Dell's been very effective at, being a great direct marketer and in turn internet marketer, is they've created very defined processes of consumer asks for a lead, consumer is followed up upon, consumer is touched, consumer is marketed, consumer is converted, and if any of those steps are missed, they repeat back into the cycle. And they've applied that same type of modeling to social media lead generation and conversion. It's been really amazing watching, and of course, being an early adopter, I had to try it myself. So I reached out to each of the major computer manufacturers and said, hey, manufacturer, I'd like to buy your product. Can you give me your sales pitch? And it was so interesting walking through that experience with Dell. They reached out to me within 24 hours. They gave me their specific promotion and their pitch. And one of the greatest things that I'll highlight, they realized consumer transparency is important, but when making purchasing transaction, most folks would not like that in live time. So they transitioned this to an offline conversation via social media, and in turn went through the rest of their sales pitch, which is really brilliant on their side of looking at a direct consumer market, and again, driving more lead generation via effective channels, because at that point, you know your customer would like to buy.
Fascinating. That's a great story. We'll end it there. Yeah. Thanks so much, Bill. This is a really nice conversation. I want to continue it another day.
Thank you very much, Steve.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
Okay.